Hello, and thank you for tuning in. Before we dive in, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. My name is Elisa Zanola, and I'm head of events for the Fashion Scholarship Fund. As many of us are very familiar with Zoom at this point, there are some great features that we'd like for you to utilize. One of them is the comment box. Feel free to send a chat to the panelists as the discussion is happening. And there's also the Q&A box. Feel free to send your questions in and we'll answer as many as possible during that Q&A segment of the discussion. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Peter Arnold.
Thank you, Lisa. Welcome, scholars and alumni, to the FSF's latest virtual mentoring session. Tonight's is themed The Evolution of Fitness and Activewear in a New World. I want to thank the VF Foundation for supporting our mentoring program and making tonight's discussion possible. And I'd like to introduce our moderator and panelists, starting with our moderator, none other than FSF board member Kira Ganon, who is also the SVP of Global Merchandising at iFIT. Welcome, Kira, and thanks for organizing tonight's session. Kira is joined by her colleagues, Nate Checketts, founder and CEO of Rhone. Welcome, Nate. Vanessa LeFebvre, who's the SVP of Commercial Sales North America at adidas, and Tony Smith, the Chief Development Officer at iFIT. Kira, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thanks, Peter. We're so excited to be here to talk about this crazy new world that we're in and how the fitness and activewear categories have changed. As we all know, COVID-19 is a wake-up call and has been for the world. Never before has health and well-being declined so rapidly for so many people at the same time around the world. And as a result, the multi-dimensional wellness industry has definitely skyrocketed. The $6 trillion market continues to rise, and especially as consumer spending rebounds. There are several focuses within this market as the consumer views wellness across several dimensions: better health, better fitness, better nutrition, better appearance, better sleep, and better mindfulness. And I was hoping to explore how some of the industry's brands are responding to these heightened needs and where you see the consumer headed. Personalization, authentic experiences, digital platforms, these will all continue to dominate the market. But let's talk about how some of the most exciting brands in the industry are responding. As you've heard, we have the luxury of speaking to a few of the industry's powerhouses, and I'd love to start with Nate Checketts from Rhone. Nate, can you share your story with us about how you drove your entrepreneurial spirit through technology and sport that led you to establishing Rhone in the marketplace? Let's start with that.
Sure. Well, it's a privilege to be here, and I really appreciate you having me on. I got a chance to meet Kira this summer, and she's been a great friend and mentor as we've been on our journey, and excited to be here with you. So Rhone is about 7 years old as a company. The idea and concept came when I was working at the National Football League, and at the time, there was a huge movement around three kind of big macro trends that we were focused on. The first is overall health and wellness was really starting to accelerate even back then. And this was driven by kind of an influx of wearable technology. So what we were calling the quantified self. I had been pulled on at the NFL to work on a special project, which was putting trackers on players to get everything from their health and wellness data, concussion, impact, but also around acceleration, speed, cut time. And some of that was going to be parsed out and used for media, which has become next-gen stats. And the other part was used for health and safety protocols within the league. And so we started focusing on, as people knew more about what was happening on the inside of their body, they were then going to need a uniform that would match this, kind of push towards health and wellness. And then the second big kind of macro trend that we were seeing was a shift in distribution models. So traditionally, the big historical players have been massively distributed through wholesale, but almost everything was shifting towards direct-to-consumer modeling. And so we thought, look, there's a big change in almost any category you could pick at that time. You see Warby Parker taking eyewear and all these other brands kind of popping up and just taking an existing business line and shifting the focus on distribution to be direct to consumer. via e-com. And then the third piece that we focused on was premiumization. The new consumer of today is focused much more on experience and less in kind of acquiring and owning things. And so we wanted to make clothing that would last, that we felt one of the most responsible things we could do as a clothing brand would make high quality product that would last for a long time. And that's how Rhone was launched. And we've been focused particularly on the men's market. We've had great partnerships in the space with brands like Equinox and Peloton. When we started at Equinox, we were on consignment. Nobody had ever heard of us. And then we started outpacing Lululemon, eventually Nike, and we became the #1 men's brand selling in that club. I've had great relationships in the space on the wholesale side, but most of our distribution has been direct through our customer on e-com, and we have 5 stores. We're opening another 2, and that's been kind of the journey, focused on premium textiles, direct distribution, and kind of servicing today's customer.
Especially with your experience in the NFL, and then of course, knowing the power of influencers and still being, you know, a smaller brand in the scheme of things. How do you drive awareness without having those highly paid influencers? You clearly did it at Equinox, and I know you're focused in on some of those more niche markets, and particularly in D2C. Can you talk a little bit about how you're driving brand recognition on the journey of Rhone?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's tricky about our brand is our logos are incredibly subtle. We think that's part of our appeal for our customers. They want great textiles and they want great fabric, but they don't want to, wear kind of a bright neon branded shirt. And so part of it was just getting product on influential people, both on social media, but also people who we just felt were influential. And so we've focused on kind of key gifting strategies, getting the product on the right people, and creating organic discussion around that. We also think that the product speaks largely for itself, which is a big piece of what kind of drives, to get efficiency in acquisition marketing, which is really the name of the game, to go from 0 to something right now. Unless you want to raise a substantial round of capital, you have to have product that people want to talk about. If they're just kind of like, it's good, it's not great, then nobody shares it, nobody talks about it. But if you give somebody a polo and they say, this is the best polo I've ever had, or this is the best workout tee that I've ever had, I've never tried anything like it, and they go and tell 5 friends, then we don't really need to have as many of the high paid endorsed athletes as has historically been had in the space. But we do have some brand ambassadors, and we're just kind of very, very selective about who we work with. Recently, we signed Jimmy Butler of the Miami Heat. We worked with Garrett McNamara. If you've seen the documentary on HBO around 100-foot wave, he set the Guinness World Record for largest wave ever surfed. So there's been kind of like select ambassadors that we worked with, but primarily it's been just making really, really great product and then trying to drive awareness through platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Google.
You could, however, have engaged Beyonce, which would have been a key win. So before we move forward, I just want to introduce Vanessa. Peter mentioned her in the beginning. I know, Vanessa, you have a ton of experience in sportswear, subscriptions, and the active space and apparel. Tell us how you got to where you are in the evolution of your career and how it's led to an understanding of the markets and the consumer base. And for those who didn't catch it at the beginning, Vanessa is a part of what I've been told to call adidas, or adidas, Americans like to call it, hence the Beyonce reference. So Vanessa, tell us about your story.
Well, thank you. First and foremost, awesome to be able to spend time with you. And I will start with, just because it once you know the story of why it's adidas, the founder is actually a man called Adi Dassler. And so, there's that. Before I came to Adidas in the US, I never really understood why, it's just like foreign, they say Adidas. So to be fancy, but it's actually a man's name. It's a good fun fact.
Growing up, I believed that it was all day I dream about soccer. That was like what was told to me. And so I always believed that until I read the story about the two brothers and the Dassler, shoe company.
Yeah.
It's an incredible story too.
And you went to a more PC upbringing than myself, because I actually thought it was something else that the S stood for. But yes, but there's so many, I love being in the brand because there's so many fun lures and moments of learning, like, why do we have 3 stripes, and, the origins of, even why we have a trefoil versus, the 3 horizontal stripes on some product. And it's a brand full of history. And how I got here, honestly, is really a story of learning. I would say, for me, it's been really good at figuring out how to learn and adapt and evolve my career. And so I started at Lord & Taylor in the buying and planning world. I worked at TJX when I learned a lot about negotiation and the off-price segment. I went to Macy's, where I got to learn a lot, pick up the private brand skills that I had at Lord & Taylor, but add on digital. And then start a new company, which my entrepreneurial skills started there with Macy's Backstage. So kind of got to put a bunch of different things together, and which I left Macy's to go join Stitch Fix. And so I got a real breadth of what it was like, not just the subscription, but really data and science. And I like to say that you can never put the genie back in the bottle, which explains so much about this year. But when you learn things like data science and how it can impact your future, you can't unlearn it. And so it really had transformed a lot of how I think. I'm now at Adidas. I'm responsible for all things commercial. I'll explain what that means. It means I have e-com, I have retail, I have wholesale, and I also have our team services. So if your kid on a soccer field is wearing Adidas, part of my team is also transacting to make that happen. So, but it really is, having come from a lot of different backgrounds and skill sets in the past, it's been sort of a real dream come true to be part of a brand that has such a historic background, but is also at the forefront of the modern day trends. So I feel quite privileged.
All the commercial markets. I mean, something that sticks out in my head, particularly in the last year, well, let's call it 5 years, is experiential retail. And Nate brought it up. I know it's like on all of our minds. Can you talk about how you and your team are trying to keep the consumer engaged and what that might mean to you for our listeners?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in that. I mean, these past 18 months have just transformed everything, right? And I think about things that I never thought happening, like my dad ordering groceries on his phone, who in the past didn't know actually how to even read email on his phone. And now he's learned how to do all these different things. Because, necessity is a great teacher. And, when we think about retail this past year, first and foremost, it was safety, right? And so, before anything, it was, how do we keep our people safe? How do we make sure we can keep our consumers safe? But now what we're learning is, how do we make that seamless integration, possible, right? And really distinguishing the purpose of retail. So we actually are really experiencing a lot of change right now, and we're testing and piloting a few different models. And a lot of that is, what do we think is the right intention, and how do we be more intentional and differentiating? Like, when we put a store in this location, what should it mean? Because gosh, we make all different types of products. So, we play with Beyonce. That's really cultural and lifestyle and athleisure components, right? But we also, are, I like to say, the best at soccer. Nate, thank you for all day I dream about it. And so how do we make sure that where soccer is a mainstream of a community, that we have the best of soccer in that community? And so that idea of localizing our intent, it is something that we're really experimenting now on a much higher level than we have in the past. And I think because of how much the world has changed in 18 months, experiential retail needs to offer purpose. Like, why does somebody want to come into the store? And really getting into the psychology of, not just what do you want to sell them, but like, why are they coming in, and how do I make them part of my connected ecosystem? So even if they aren't there to connect, to buy or transact in that moment, how do I instill with them that loyalty and sense of connection so that they're leaving our stores feeling a little bit more connected to Adidas, a little bit more inspired to be loyal members in the future, and really part of the brand, and not necessarily about an individual transaction.
And it's funny, you talk about how it manifests in the brick and mortar in the digital space, but experience also impacted fitness in general, and what our experiences are expected to be, meaning in-home fitness versus at the gym. So I want to bring in Tony for a second. He's driving innovation and excitement in a fitness company that's constantly evolving. I will admit I'm a part of that company today, so I might know a little bit under the covers of what's happening there, and always finding new ways to reinvent himself through that change. So Tony, can you share your journey in the fitness space, and particularly how you kind of grew up through iFIT as it's constantly evolved?
Well, I'll kind of start where Vanessa started. She talked about learning and adapting and changing. My education was in communication, so my degree, Nate, sorry, at the University of Utah, maybe that's good, was in communication. So
are we going to talk about the game that just happened, or we'll just leave it? Okay.
That was a softball for you, so yeah.
All right.
We can do that later. So I bring that up because I started here with iFIT right out of school and took a sales position. And the first two accounts that I had was HSN and QVC, and at the time, very emerging, especially in the fitness space, with that medium. And then took on additional responsibility on the sales side. Did that for 10 years. And there was a lot of change in that 10 years as it relates to what the retail landscape looked like in the early 90s and what it looked like in the early 2000s. But then I took a change from the sales side over to product development, which meant I was in charge of a team of industrial designers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and merchandising. Far from my first 10 years on the sales side and what my education was. Not an engineer, not a designer, had a sense for merchandising. So as I look over my journey, like Vanessa, if I wasn't willing to learn and to adapt and to change and to evolve and be flexible and have a thirst for that knowledge and making myself even more valuable here at the company, I'd probably be in a much different situation than I am today. So, I think that's a key takeaway. As I look back at my career, is just don't get set in I'm just one thing. We have a capacity to do so many things, and if we have the willingness and the desire to grow and to learn and to change and to adapt, boy, it just can be such a valuable asset in your career. So what I'm doing today now is overall the product development for the company, whether it's a jump rope all the way up to a high-end treadmill, bike, elliptical, you name it, all the product that we put out runs through our industrial design and engineering teams. So that is the kind of my journey. I've been with the company since '94. So over almost 28-year period, a lot of change, not only in the product and the innovation of technology, but also the retail landscape and the distribution channels and what that looks like today is so different. So the companies also had to change and adapt and be flexible and move and meet the consumer where they want to be met, and have a solution for them wherever they want to shop and whatever their affordability and capability is. And so that would probably be the big theme in my career individually and with the company, is just that ability to change, to adapt, and to grow.
And
And
arguably,
Tony did not ask me to say this, but I have to say, I have the Icon Vault, or the iFIT Vault, which is just an incredible product. And what you guys have built, the way every machine connects to each other is really remarkable. I'm fortunate to, have worked in the fitness space for a long time and have products from a lot of different companies, but you guys make really incredible products.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that, Nate.
as
Do you.
for those
Sorry
on the
for my
call,
Travis Matthews shirt. I should have been more audience. But again, thank you, and I welcome the scholars and the alumni, and just privileged to be a part of this panel discussion today.
I should say that for those who don't know, the iFIT company is a holding company for several brands. So the vault that they're speaking of is the Nordic Trek Vault. And then Tony also works on a brand called Proform, and Weider, which is a strength brand. I want to kind of go back to that mention that I had about the state of gyms. And the benefits of in-home memberships now through the app platforms, and would love, Tony, for you to talk a little bit about how you see the space shifting, and as a result, what categories you're focused on to make sure that you do, as you say, meet the consumer where they want to be met.
Mm-hmm. Well, quickly, our business model is pretty unique in the space where we're multi-branded, multi-category, multi-channel, multi-price point. So we are a very inclusive company. We have a product wherever people want to start. Like I say, if someone's just at a position where they can just pick up maybe a 3-pound dumbbell, or just get on a yoga mat, we have a product for them. And so we're unique in that way, that our multi-brand strategy allows us to play in multi-distribution channels, allows us to play in multiple price points, from OPP all the way up to high end. And so, we really, we care about the consumer, but it's so important to understand to make sure that the consumer is met where they want to be met, and that we have a personalized experience for them, because fitness looks different for everybody. It's not just off the shelf, this is what it looks like, and everybody has this goal to strive for, because everybody's just different and unique. And we want to make sure that we get people from where they are to where they want to be, and then inspire them to even do more. And so we have product that covers that entire journey that a consumer wants to be on. Now, I guess more importantly to your question now, Kiera, on club versus in-home, it kind of plays into our strategy that we're in the club. We have a brand called Free Motion. It's our club brand. And we have iFIT experience on that product that's in the club. So if a consumer walks into let's say a Planet Fitness or an Orange Theory, they're able to get on one of our products, experience our iFIT content. And then tomorrow, if they end up wanting to work out at home and say, I can't make it to the club today, I'm going to work out at home, we have home product under the Proform or Nordic Track brand that has that same iFIT experience. And so we quite frankly don't care if the consumer chooses the club, the gym, or the home, because we're in both places. And the experience is the same whether they work out in the club or if they work out in the home. So you don't have to relearn anything. So I can hop on a treadmill at Orange Theory today, and I can get on my treadmill tomorrow in my home and have the same iFIT experience through our wonderful content that interacts with our hardware. So the other part in that is it relates to social, why people want to go to the gym. There's a social aspect to it, which is very, very important. And we also provide through our iFIT community that social connection and aspect, even if you're working at home. And so community is important to us, that culture.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a kind of a democratic approach to what we're all about. Is we just want to make sure that we have something for everyone. We're a health and well-being company, so we care about the overall health and well-being, mental and physical well-being of humanity.
That's a big statement.
And that's what gets us out of bed in the morning. We have that social drive to help improve the lives of humanity. And the way we do it is unique, like I say, with our branded category distribution approach, that we have something for everybody on a personalized level, and we can progress you along the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to, when I think about, what's happening at iFIT and the focus on innovation, and how we continue to meet the consumer's needs, I also want to ask about innovation in apparel and what that might mean to Nate. Tell me a little bit about, and tell our audience about how you're innovating in that space, whether it's through, connectivity or materials or what have you.
Yeah, would love to. And I think, just to finish up the point that Tony was making on what's happening here, I had a conversation with a big club company, and we were talking about this very fact of what is the consumer going to do in 5 years? And this was pre-pandemic, but they were of the opinion, I can't understand why anybody would want to work out at home. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's so much better in club. And I just looked at them and I thought, you have no idea, because I think the future of fitness isn't or, it's and, right? It's not, I'm choosing between one or the other. It's, I want it all. And I think that flexibility and ability to meet the consumer of where they want to do whatever is part of the future of apparel as well. And so what we're seeing is increased demand and focus on versatility, the ability to take product in between categories. We're a men's only product company today. If you look at the way men dress today versus the way they dressed 10 years ago, it has changed dramatically. And in particular, the way that men organize their closets. So, historically, it has been done by use case or end use case. So it was, this is what I can wear to work. This is what I can wear to the gym. This is what I can wear to hang out with my friends on the weekend. This is what I can wear to lounge. This is what I wear when I go on vacation. Excluding formal wear, it's almost all collapsed into this same single category. And a lot of people like to use the word athleisure wear, which I don't love as a term. We call it performance lifestyle, because that's what we believe the next 10 years are going to be about, is that as the quantified self drives a desire to have performance in your life, you want product that's going to match that at work, at home, at the gym, on the go. And so we've pioneered some new fabric and textile technologies. We introduced to the market something called Gold Fusion, which is really a leader and pioneer in the space of anti-odor. Traditionally, most garments are washed using effectively a pesticide to fight odor and bacteria. The challenge with these treatments, which are topical, is that they wash out and that they get worse over time. So that means that the product is incrementally less effective at fighting odor and bacteria every single time you wear it. Odor is caused by, it's pretty gross, but I went like really deep on this a few years ago. It's caused by your skin effectively flaking off onto your clothing. And that bacteria is what's causing the majority of the odor. Well, the Gold Fusion uses gold and silver nanoparticles that gets infused into the fiber of the garment. And after 99 washes, it's still 98+% effective at fighting odor. Whereas historically, the industry standard has been 15 to 20 washes. But what's more important for us is it's eco-friendly, it's non-toxic, which is not the case with most of the treatments and topicals
I was
agents
about
that
to
are
ask
used.
about that. I've
It's so
seen
funny.
a lot of studies over.
Yeah, we shop at places like Whole Foods and we think about what we put into our body, but we very often do not think about what we put onto our body. And I think that's going to be a big focus of responsibly sourced materials and fabrics and treatments in the future. So there's been big emphasis for us on that. We helped bring to market an interesting technology a few years ago that was all around increasing cellular blood flow. And so effectively what this fabric did is it refracted back your body's heat to increase the vascular flow. Really interesting. You might have heard Tom Brady wear this as kind of a sleep suit a while ago. Both the great opportunity for a company of our size and the challenging piece is we get to bring things to market really fast. But when we see traction in something that works, very often we'll see big companies, in this case, this was Under Armour, come in and say we want an exclusive on this technology. So we'll get things kind of 1 to 2 years ahead of some of the bigger players. But for us to kind of hold on to it, either as an exclusive or in isolation, is really difficult for a company of our size. But we're kind of happy to be on the leading edge of some of those technologies and to work with bigger partners to bring that to a broader marketplace.
I love how you talk about hating the term athleisure. And one question that came to me the other day actually was, do you hang this or fold this? And I was like, what's the difference? And it was a man, and he was explaining to me, I thought, there is a real difference between if you put it in your dresser versus if you hang it. And I hadn't ever thought about that before. But knowing Vanessa's background and where she's come from and now where she is, I have to say to her, and this is a trick question, but do you think that the athleisure fashion moment has peaked? Is this the biggest moment given like the size of the increases in this industry over the pandemic?
Well, I did just famously use the phrase, which is one of my favorite, of like the genie doesn't go back in the bottle. So like, I don't think that for a long time now, fashion is cyclical, and I can get into a large like psychological conversation about how everything eventually sort of iterates and comes back in some dimension. But I don't think that people are going to give up on the idea of clothing being comfortable, versatile, sustainable, right? And I think that, like Rhone, adidas, I think actually one of our best kept secrets is how committed we are to sustainability, not just wearable, but sustainable. I think most famously, we did something with Allbirds recently. And I think people, that's sort of building our awareness about the commitment. But, we have a Futurecraft Loop shoe that is 100%, you bring your shoe back, we'll make you a new one out of that same product. And, that's pretty far out. My team just showed me a shoe that we made out of mushrooms. And I'm like, wait, we're making shoes out of and it is pretty mind blowing what's capable. But, as far as, I think that the thing about the space that active sport, athleisure, whatever terms you want to use, is at the forefront of innovation. And it was the provocative clothing that came into the industry, in the 80s and the 90s with tracksuits and things like that, that kind of changed people's thoughts about what you could wear and a lot of those things didn't go away. Yes, we go between whether it's a jogger or a denim, and I think that, paradigm will change or continue to evolve. But more and more people are wearing sneakers because it's better for your feet, it's better for your back, it's better for your health. More people are working out. As many people are getting more invested into their own health for mind and body, and getting comfortable with the idea of like, this makes my life easier. Like shopping in heels is not fun. Like, I don't think I'll ever do that again, and maybe when I was in my 20s, that was something I might have done, but I don't think that's going back. And so I think everything evolves and it'll continue to look different, because as human creatures, I think we're always kind of moving forward and pushing the paradigm of what and how things can look. but athleisure is going to continue to evolve and be part of our day-to-day, just because I think we're much more conscious than we ever were. And that balance of health and wellness and innovation come together so well in this space.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think I would ask all of you guys, if you were to start talking about trends in the category, and when I say category, I mean the health and well-being fitness category in totality, what would you tout as some of the biggest trends that you're chasing down today?
I think Vanessa said it. Like, there's no question in my mind, the number one factor that everybody wants going forward is comfort, in every aspect. And I love what you said, Vanessa, about almost everything in fashion is cyclical. Like, something that was cool, like our longer shorts back in, or shorter shorts back in, like it will go around. But I just don't see us as consumers giving up comfort anytime soon. And in fact, there was a recent women's wear survey that the number one factor that people said they wanted in their workwear was 96% said comfort. And what's interesting is how casualization has increased as a result of comfort, and how some of these more traditional silhouettes like dress shirts still exist, but they're more performance driven. We launched a dress shirt that's made with this incredible Italian fabric. Basically only us and Laura Piana use it. But it's 4-way stretch. I've run in it before. Like, it's incredible. Your body uses your body's own heat to evaporate the wrinkles. I've like stuffed it in a bag, pulled it out, walked straight into a meeting. So I think that's what's going to be really interesting to watch, is what traditional silhouettes we tend to hold on to because of expectation and what kind of has existed before us, and what casualization will happen. But performance and comfort are absolutely going to be a part of, no matter, whatever trend happens, that they're going to be at the forefront.
Yeah, agreed. Tony, before we get into a few questions that have been sent to us from the panel, from the listeners and the scholars, what advice, are you ready? Would you give to your younger self? What advice would you give to your younger self? Remember, we have a lot of super excited and dynamic students and young professionals on the call. So talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to ask the rest of you guys the same thing, by the way. So just prepare.
So the advice I'd give to my younger self, one of the things I mentioned was just the, adapting, changing, and just being willing to change. Trends come and go. Boy, if you're just stuck in your ways, we wouldn't be in business today, because we'd still be trying to sell a treadmill to Walmart at a price, and missed out the whole interactivity, connectivity of fitness and content and community and all that. If we were like, it's just not going to happen. It's kind of like what Blockbuster decided to do when Netflix came about. They looked at it and said that's going to drain our margin down. It's too expensive. Let's not go there. And we know the end result of that. So you've got to be flexible. Gosh, not to be fear of failure. Failure is a wonderful thing. I think too many people are fear of failure. Therefore, they don't take risks. They don't put themselves out there, because failure can be viewed as weakness, or that's what you're going to be defined as. I mean, there's too many examples of how important failure is, and how failure has driven innovation and really wonderful outcomes. Gosh, just surround yourself with better people than you are, and you've got to have the confidence in yourself, and the just the security in yourself to say, hey, I want to surround myself with better people than I am, and I want to help inspire people to become their best selves. And I think that's a big quality of leadership. And I could go on and on and on, because I could have used a lot of this when I was younger, but that's just part of the process. Process of life is learning, it's becoming, it's failing, it's learning how to pick yourself back up and become stronger and better, and have a positive attitude all the way through it, and to not be victimized by anything. And, just nothing replaces hard work.
Yeah. What about you, Vanessa? You're on mute.
Oh, I was thinking we can go through a whole thing without those words. It's three things. One, don't sweat the small stuff. If I think about how many times when I was young, huh?
I can still learn from that.
I mean, it's just how many times I've overstressed or had anxiety about things that honestly, it didn't matter. And I think a great question is like, does this matter tomorrow? Does this matter next week? Does this matter in a year from now? And just like whenever you're feeling anxiety, gauging it and like consciously asking yourself those questions in the moment. The second one would be crave feedback. I think, I think one of the things when I was younger is I thought of feedback as like, oh shit, I didn't do something right. So it goes back to don't sweat the small stuff, but feedback is what makes you better. And like whoever you're actually having the most antagonistic relationship, if there is that person that you feel like you're both head for the big job, that's who you want the feedback from more than anyone. And I think often we get like competitive with some of our peer group versus seeking them. And I would say the biggest moments of my growth have come from feedback of those around me. And I think the last thing I would just say is always practice gratitude. I think I was always looking at what others had that I didn't when I was younger. I came from a very challenging background, or what I thought was a challenging background, but everything has perspective and there's always something that you have that somebody else doesn't. And I think really as early and as young, you can get into experiencing gratitude and never being jealous of what somebody else has, and really counting your blessings every single day just makes you a better human, a better leader. And honestly, it gives you empathy for your consumer, which ultimately is what makes you better in this business.
That's good. I know, at least that's like, yay. Nate, do you have anything to add to those words of wisdom?
Yeah, some really deep words of wisdom. I always take issue with this question because I think everything we would say, we probably heard at that age, right? So I think probably the main advice I would try and give myself is to really focus on learning from others, and doing so by serving others. I think very often when you're young and you want to kind of grab the world and charge, you're like, all right, how do I move forward? How do I accomplish something? And I've just really learned from some of the best leaders that kind of that servant leader mentality is so powerful. And that if you approach someone genuinely and you say, how can I help you? What can I do for you? How can I make your life easier? It is one of the best ways to learn, to grow, develop. And it's also one of the best ways to excel. It is not generally how people approach life. And what I wish I saw more from young incoming new hires is really around this idea of, how can I help? What can I do? And then just going and doing it and working really, really hard there. So that's what I would focus on.
We have a lot of questions from the group. So I'm going to do my best to work through these and in no particular order. This one jumped out at me. And it was directed to Vanessa because of the amount of company experience that you have. But I think all the panelists could probably answer this. With so many incredible companies on your resume, how did you know when to move on from one role or one company to the next? I'm feeling stuck in my career and wonder if it's time for me to move on to my next opportunity professionally. Any insight is helpful. All
right, so I have a mantra that I say, connect, inspire, and grow. And so for me, you have to know what you value in any place that you're at. And so I value connecting. Am I able to connect with those around you? Do they give me, energy? Do I feel like I get the information that I need? Do I feel connected? Inspired. Do I get inspired going to work every day? Right? Like, do I, have an opportunity to inspire the consumer? Do I feel like I'm adding value to what's going on? And am I learning, which is growth, right? So like, I am a creature that needs, like, I want to feed my curiosity. I like to learn every single day. And let's be honest, like, at some points you get to your career, you sort of, am I doing what I want? Am I getting what I need? And I've had a few moments where the answer was no. I didn't feel that. And I think, going back, I guess I would add one more thing I would tell my younger self, but don't be afraid of change. I think a lot of times people get too comfortable. And I know Tony mentioned this, like being, he fed off of me mentioning it before, but change is a reality of life. I don't ever think, though, that you should change jobs because you have something bad going on. So that's the only thing I would say is, like, you got to fix your shit too. Excuse me for my language. Like, if you learn from going through the difficult moments, I think you have to have absolute intention and clarity of, like, why you're leaving and what it is that you're going to get from that experience, the next thing that's going to offer you that you don't have in the one. So I see people right now changing jobs because they're bored, or changing jobs because they can't control anything in life, and they can control that, they can control where they work, and they're making decisions that are a little bit based on the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic and it really sucks, and you can't plan a vacation and you can't plan any of the things that you want. So they're starting to change, like, the very few things that they have. I don't know that that's really going to feed the soul and give you the nurturing. So I would say, make sure that you just have clear intentions. I know what mine are. What are yours? And make sure that you stack up your decision-making around what you really value.
I was talking to a relative of mine that's in the HR field, and she said that they're talking about the last 2 months as the Great Resignation. Like, people are just changing jobs. Like, that's what's happening and she said the same thing, Vanessa, that there's power in that. There's a level of control that people have, and it's not always for the right reasons, but I think that was good advice.
That's really good advice. I'd love to add something on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because the best career advice I received was from someone I worked with at the NFL. He's basically one of the EVPs, so reports directly to the commissioner. And I asked him about something similar, and what he said to me is, right now the world has changed. There are not very many Tony Smiths in the world, that have been at the same place for 28, 30 years. That level of loyalty and commitment to one company is really difficult to find. And the challenging thing for us now is we're always available, with LinkedIn, and you can always be recruited. You can always pick your head up. You can always talk to somebody. You can always be intrigued by something else. And so he had this great concept of pick your head up every 2 to 3 years, take a look around, ask yourself some of the questions that Vanessa was asking you, and then put your head down and commit, and give yourself a period. And maybe it is only 2 years, but try not to think about it, because one of my favorite authors is a man named Clayton Christensen, who talked about it's easier to do something 100% of the time than it is to do something 90%, 95% of the time. Because if you do something 95% of the time, every time you're faced with that decision, you have to make a decision. If it's 100% of the time, there's no decision. So if you've put your head down and you say, I'm here for 3 years and I'm not thinking about it, when there's a recruiter or something sounds attractive, you say, no, I put my head down and I'm going to be here for 3 years. And the challenging thing is when our head starts spinning and we're always looking, that gets emotionally and even physically exhausting. And that's been such helpful advice for me in everything, and in goal setting. But just pick a window, try not to think about it, stay focused, and then give yourself a window to pick up and ask some really important questions.
I think that's powerful too. There was a question for Tony specific on his experience, even though he has been at the same company. Tony, has it been 28? How long has it been?
Yeah, it's coming up on 28, but yeah, 28 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question is, Tony, how are you able to break into product development without direct experience in that field? How does sales translate over to product development? And what skills do you think helped you succeed in your role?
Wow. There's a real sales aspect to the product development. You've got to spend some time with the customer to understand what the opportunities are, what the needs are, trends, and those types of things. And so there was a connection between what I was doing on the sales side and the product development side. So I was still able to work with all of our customers to really understand trends and needs, create opportunities that I could then bring back to the product development team. I didn't need to be an engineer. I have ideas, but again, it gets back to kind of some leadership skills of just inspiring people, casting the vision, giving them inspiration, and then getting out of the way and letting them do it. At the same time, still being accountable for the overall product development. But it kind of gets back to Nate, what you were saying is, you keep your head down, you focus, and then at the appropriate times you pick up and you just kind of assess life and see how things are going. But it's easy to get stuck in the things that you don't enjoy and start watering the weeds of life. I'm not an engineer. I don't like it. It's just not me. And I could spend my time thinking, just watering those weeds of, I don't like this aspect of my job. We all have things that we're responsible for that we might like less than others. But if I sat and just became negative in the aspect, I'm not an engineer, I don't feel like I can insert myself at any point in the product development and solve and correct problems because I don't have that capability of being an engineer, mechanical or otherwise, then that's what I become. I become this negative. I hate my job. I'm not feeling, satisfied. I'm going to start looking elsewhere versus focusing on watering the flowers of the things that I enjoy doing, because there's a lot of things that I do enjoy doing, and accentuate those things, appreciating the goodness in life and my job responsibilities, because they far outweigh the things that I don't particularly enjoy as much. And so the transition from sales to product development, I love product. I love innovation. Don't ask me to design, get into the CAD system and engineer and do those types of things and write code. That's not me. But I enjoy the ideation, the creation, the brainstorming of how to solve problems for the consumer, how to differentiate yourself. Because if you don't have a differentiator, if Nate didn't have something different in his brand, he'd just be another brand that came and went. But he found a lane and a need, and it's working for him. And it's the same thing with any business. If you don't have something that's different, that solves problems for the consumer, that it helps improve people's lives in a unique, differentiated way, it's going to be very challenging for you. And I like that part of the job. So I tend to focus on the things and accentuate the things that I do enjoy, because they far outweigh the things that I don't enjoy as much, like engineering. But I've surrounded myself with wonderful engineers, both mechanical and electrical, and wonderful industrial designers that do a fantastic job. I trust them. I give them direction and vision, and I stay out of their way. They're the experts. I don't need to be an expert. So I don't know if that answers it, but that's kind of the approach that I've taken.
No, go
Oh,
ahead.
I was
Vanessa.
just going to chime in, and you just touched on the power of any leader, which is knowing how to get out of the way. And so I just had to reiterate that.
I was just about to say, all about the people that you surround yourself with, either on your team or your peers. If you don't have the right group of people in front of you and like have that level of inspiration that Vanessa said that you have to have every day, no matter how smart you are or how inventive you are, you will never be successful. So I like that.
At the same time with that, you want to make sure that you have the people you work with backs, that you never want to make them feel like if there's a challenge that's arise, that you abandon them. You're with them every step of the way, because ultimately I'm accountable for product development. Even if I've got a bad engineered design in a product that causes some issue, ultimately it's my responsibility, but I don't just let that group of engineers go unsupported, and like it's a team sport when all things are well, and it's an individual sport when things aren't well. It's a team sport every step of the way through the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm. Just like the NFL, Nate. But there's one more question. We have like 2 minutes, so I'm gonna see if you can. And it's a really big question, so it's totally unfair to end here. But what are some of the technologies, like the anti-odor one that you mentioned, that are exciting to you? And what do you think will be the next big tech retail breakthrough? It's sort of like this monster question. Well, let's just see. It's like power round.
Is this for all, or for
whoever wants to answer that? Sure. Yeah.
Why doesn't Nate and Vanessa share their pipeline for all of us? Let me get out my pencil.
Well, I'll tell you what I don't think is next, and I think it matters because you're seeing people say, why aren't you putting kind of trackers in clothing? I think it's a total disaster. I think the module matters. I'm a big fan of Oura Ring. I wear it all the time. One of the reasons why I like it is because I forget it's there. And to me, great technology is technology that gets out of the way, not that pulls you in. And the idea that I would put a tracker on my shirt that I then have to move to my next shirt and then everything has to be integrated is just a bad idea. And it's complicated, and therefore it won't work. And so when we think about great technology or textile technology, it just works. You don't have to do anything about it. So we use a great fabric called Delta, for example, that uses a honeycomb structure that is an interlocking honeycomb. It's hydrophobic and hydrophilic. It pulls your body's moisture away from you. It fills the yarn with your own body's moisture to cool you down. So it like accelerates your own body's cooling system from sweat. But there's really amazing things happening in the space. I'm sure Vanessa could share some things. Some we can't share, but in general, that's kind of how we think about textile technology. Is it needs to get out of the way and just do its job.
Yeah.
For those people whose questions we did not get to, I'm sure there's a way for us to answer them post this event, right, Peter?
Yeah, we can circulate the questions to whomever they're posed to and get answers to the folks that pose them. So thanks.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much to all of our panelists, and of course to the Fashion Scholarship Fund for hosting us today. And I wish you guys the best week. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kira.
Thank you.
We did it. It's a deaf
Thank
moderator. Thanks, Vanessa, Tony, Nate. Thank you very, very much.
It's an honor. Thank you.